Welcome to Cultivating Courage, a podcast exploring fear, courage, and stepping into a life filled with purpose, connection, and love. Today, I'll be chatting with my co-host, Matt Maxwell, to help you guys get to know his awesomeness. Welcome to Cultivating Courage, the podcast. I'm Kristin Robinson, your host. No. Why are you laughing?
Because I just started yawning. I didn't mean to.
And Matt is bored already. Welcome, Matt, my lovely co-host.
Hi. Sorry for yawning.
That's all right. You just got back from India.
Yeah.
So you're a little bit jet lagged.
That's true. It's crazy because I've been back more than 2 weeks, and my body's still super confused about what time it is.
But you were there for a while. It wasn't like you were there for 4 or 5 days.
That's
you
right.
were there for...
I was there for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Yeah.
So on this episode of Cultivating Courage, I am going to grill Matt. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm super ready.
So that you guys can get to know Matt's awesomeness the way that I know his awesomeness. So funny story, Matt and I actually met because we both attended a class about starting a podcast. And Matt was brave enough to actually talk to me. I don't really talk to people, but Matt does. And now, almost a year later, right? Yeah, a year later, here we are.
Yeah.
Starting a podcast.
Yeah. And it's funny how little that year has had anything to do with podcasting.
So true.
And then Kristin's like, hey, I want to do a podcast. And we're like, oh, that sounds great. And then I was like, oh, it's funny because we actually met at a podcast class. So
yeah. And it took me probably a week after I mentioned to you, like, I want to do a podcast and I want to do it with you. I think it took me about a week before I sent you a text that was like, don't you think it's funny? Like, it didn't dawn on me until like probably a week later that there was like this weird kind of twist in it. Yeah. So, Matt.
Yeah. Hey, wait, have you told people what the point of this podcast is?
Oh.
I feel like you should tell them since it's the very first episode.
So Cultivating Courage is a podcast about exploring fear in a way that you're able to walk towards love, joy, clarity, whatever it is that you're seeking, that fear might be holding you back from, and that if you just take a deep breath and muster the courage to move through it, you can find whatever you're looking for. That's what it's about without me actually like practicing it and Matt putting me on the spot. Thank you for that.
I love that. It's great.
So in addition to us meeting at the podcast class, you are also a personal coach or a professional coach. And we had a coaching relationship. So, tell people what it is that you do.
Sure. Well, I do a bunch of things. So it kind of depends on like the week or the day. But my primary profession is as a professional coach. So in that capacity, I work with individuals, mostly one-on-one, to have them get a lot of clarity about what they really want in their life and what's in the way of actually creating that. And that could be in their career or their relationships or hobbies or artistic projects or whatever it is that they really want in their life. So that's my coach world. In addition, I'm creating a business right now. I'm in the middle of launching a business that is, coaching will be a part of it, but it's particularly geared towards organizational culture transformation. And so a lot of my philosophy of life is that we focus on the results we want. I want this to happen. And then we allow ourselves to be miserable in the creating of that.
Totally.
And so my philosophy for coaching is both that it's, any coaching is directed towards where am I and where do I want to be and how do I get there? Just creating the life we want.
Right.
And my philosophy of coaching and life is that it's also about the how. So it's not just the results I want, it's how do I want to experience creating those results. And a lot of us have it that like I have to suffer.
Right. I have to work so hard, and it's got to be a difficult struggle to get where I want to go,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so then we won't sometimes even work towards it. We'll either be
Right.
miserable working towards it, or we'll just be like, but I don't want to feel miserable, so I'm not going to create what I really want.
Yeah.
And so the business will be looking with the business I'm creating will be working with organizations in the how. So it's not just what results do you want as an organization, but how do you as individuals actually want to experience your day-to-day work?
Right. Like
so
how
that
do you
it's
want to feel?
yeah,
every
so
day?
that it's fulfilling and connected, and you get to really love being there, creating the results you're creating.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How did you come to be a coach? Start at the beginning, Matt.
That's so long. Oh, well, my great grandparents were, and then my parents, and then, let's see.
Well, because you used to be a lawyer.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Good.
let's start there.
Okay. Good. So I used to be a lawyer, and a lot of my life has been formed by. Well, gosh, this goes without saying. My life has really been affected by how I grew up.
Yeah. Well, way to be self-aware
Yeah,
about
I know.
that. Not
I'm
everyone
so
recognizes
aware.
that.
It's like my upbringing had an effect on me.
Oh. Oh.
I know. I figured that out.
Yeah.
So I was raised in a very religious culture environment as a Mormon, and I loved a lot of things about that upbringing. And there was a real sense of purpose to my life. I felt like my life had purpose, and I belonged, and there was a lot of meaning, even in like the struggles I went through. And so I think like spirituality is a really important part of my life.
Yeah.
And particularly like living a life of purpose and meaning. And so
Then you became a
how
lawyer.
much do I want to tell
Yeah.
about this? Let's see. I became a lawyer, and that was largely informed by like my religious structure, which was that, you know, man's responsibility, a husband's responsibility is to make a really responsible living. And that was basically it. And I got a really good LSAT score. So I guess I should go to law school.
That's interesting. I don't think I like actually knew that it wasn't something where you're like, oh, I want to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was like
mostly
I
just
want to
like
make
a sense of duty.
good living and provide, and this job will do that.
Yeah. And like I said, I got a good LSAT score. So it was like, oh, well, I would be good at this. So without really looking at, is this really what I want my life to be about? It was just like, I'd be good at this and it would make money.
Yeah.
So I became a lawyer. And then eventually, like, everything in my life turned completely around. And I kind of had a crisis of faith and left Mormonism. And that resulted in the end of my marriage, and just kind of like my life kind of blew up. And in all of that, I had this kind of, I don't know if it's an epiphany, because I don't really know if it's true or not, but I had this idea of like, what if when we die, we're really gone?
Right.
And that's it.
What if this is it?
And for a lot of people, they've lived with that their entire life. But for someone who's like very steeped in my religious beliefs,
Right.
that was really scary. And also really empowering, because, you know, if there's an afterlife where everything's happy and great, then if your life's just sort of okay or even kind of bad,
Right.
no big deal.
Right. You've got the afterlife to look forward to.
God will make it all way better after
Right.
this. And that may be so, and if it is, awesome.
Right.
I would love that.
Yeah.
But my epiphany at the time was basically, this could be it. This could be the only time where I get to experience and breathe and see and connect and just experience whatever there is in life.
Yeah.
And my legal career was drafting mutual fund prospectuses.
Oh, that sounds very exciting.
If you are ever having trouble getting to sleep, call me and I'll tell you more about it.
Perfect. Be like, Matt, are you awake? Can you tell me about the mutual fund prospecti? What's the plural of
I don't know. Nobody knows.
I feel like it would be
prospectuses.
Oh, that's not as fun.
No, it's not. But it sounds awkward.
Oh, well, it does. Anything that ends in that, like
Octopus.
Yeah, octopus.
Yeah.
Pussy.
I was bitten by an octopus. I'll tell that story later. So I just kind of had this epiphany of like, oh, I want to spend my life doing things I actually love. And so that started me on the journey towards coaching and kind of transitioning out of my legal career. And that took a while.
What steps or what activities, what exercises did you do to help you get to like coaching is the thing?
Well, I feel like I'm still in that, you know, like that discovery, because I love coaching and I really love big group work. So I also do like workshops and public speaking. And I think, I don't know, I had this idea years ago that's like, I just want to be like Stephen Covey, who gets to like go into rooms and share and relate to people in a way that leaves them empowered to create the lives they want.
Yes.
I didn't really know what that was.
Right.
I didn't really even know what coaching was.
Right.
I just knew like I want to have conversations and be in rooms where we're talking and learning and transforming in ways that fundamentally allow us to live the lives we really want.
Yeah. Take us a step closer to creating what we envision for ourselves.
Yeah.
And not just that, but I think empower us to actually create that vision, because I think a lot of people, to your point earlier, like don't even give themselves the freedom or the space to create that, or even think about like, what does this look like? You know, you grew up, went to high school, went to college, got married, like the next, you know, like, oh, I need to provide, so this is the next step, without really exploring what it is that, you know, brings your heart joy. And it took something big to explore that. And I think that's the case for everyone.
What was your big thing?
My big thing? I think my big thing was just realizing that my life was just okay. And I still am like giving myself permission to create something bigger than what it is right now. But I think my big thing was probably like my life kind of blowing up. Giant breakup, moved across the world to Thailand, completely alone without my family or friends. And that gave me the distance to explore who I am and what brings me joy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
Cool.
Okay, so we know you went to India recently, but you travel a fair amount.
Yeah.
What is probably your most favorite trip you've ever taken, unless it was your trip to India 2 weeks ago?
No, I mean, India was so eye-opening in so many ways. I don't know. It's funny because like there are a lot of trips I go on where I'm like, I could live here. Mm-hmm. And then I look back and I'm like, that's probably because I was on vacation there. I could live anywhere on vacation.
Right.
Boy, I don't know. I've had some just really amazing travel experiences. To me, there's like vacation, which I don't do that often.
Yeah.
I usually travel because I want to see or serve or learn, some combination of those. I'm right now. What's coming to my mind is a trip I did to Guatemala maybe 6 years ago. I'm a fluent Spanish speaker because I was a Mormon missionary and I served in Los Angeles speaking Spanish. Okay. So I speak Spanish fluently, but I don't get a lot of chances to use it in my everyday life in Chicago. And this particular trip, Guatemala is just stunning. It's amazing. Like just so beautiful, and I love the greenery. And so I went on this we traveled around a little bit, and then we went on a service trip, and we ended up in this really, really remote village that was about 20 miles from the nearest town that had kind of basic services.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way for most of the people in this village to get to that town is walking. So just really remote. And I went with a group of doctors and dentists and pharmacists, and we just kind of did a bunch of basic health care service.
Yeah.
And it was great for me because I know nothing about healthcare, and I don't really want to know much. But I got to interpret. And there were points that most of the people in that village don't speak Spanish. They speak like their local Mayan dialect.
Oh, interesting.
And so there were two interpreters.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a person interpreting from their dialect into Spanish, and then I was interpreting from Spanish into English for the doctor, and then all the way back.
Yeah.
And but just getting to connect with the people, even though we didn't speak the same language, and also seeing this one woman. The people waited in line like all day to talk to the doctors. And this woman came in, and she's like, my legs hurt all the time. My legs hurt so much. I don't know what it's coming from. I don't know.
Yeah.
So he starts talking to her, and eventually we realize that twice a week she walks to that town 20 miles away and walks back on the same day.
Wow.
And carries back water, stuff, food, heavy loads. 40 miles twice a week.
Twice a week.
Yeah. Wow. And he's like, your legs hurt because that's what human legs do when you're walking that much.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just walking really far.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, and I'm having a hard time because my Starbucks isn't perfect.
Right. It puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're probably pretty close to the end.
What time are we at?
I don't really know, James.
Oh, we got more time to talk.
We do have more time to talk, but I definitely want to ask questions about what you're hoping. What compelled you when I asked you to do the podcast? What was it that made it kind of an easy yes for you? Or was it an easy yes? Maybe it wasn't. I don't know.
Well, I think there are a few things that made it an easy yes. One is you're awesome.
Thank you.
And I like you. I like your energy. I think you have just such a relatable presence, and also positive, and it's just this wonderful mix of positivity and authenticity and humor.
Thank you. And now fun. You guys can see why I asked him to be my co-host.
Yeah. So one was just I think we just talk so easily. Yeah. So I love that. And it just sounded fun. And another is that I really appreciate the vision of this, and we've talked about our vision of this, so I'll just share with you guys what I see, which is this is kind of a unique, our first few episodes are just going to be the two of us, but eventually we're going to have people come in from our lives or other guests, and we're just really going to talk about what's really occurring in people's lives. And there are things that I think we all want. And sometimes we're not even present to them because we don't allow ourselves to dream, but there are things we yearn for. And they might be really grandiose, or they might be simple, like, I just want to have real friendships, or I really want to feel meaning and satisfaction in my work. Or I want $1 bazillion. Right. But they're just things that we yearn for. And basically all of those things, everything that we really want in our life that we don't currently have, will require courage to get.
Absolutely.
And because the reason we don't have them is because there's something uncomfortable about them. Yeah. There's something that we're afraid of. Yeah. And that's why they're not there yet.
Right.
And so I just think courage is such a cool way to frame the journey of getting the life and creating life as we really want it to be.
Yeah.
So I love the theme. And the other thing is, a couple years ago, so like my mental conditioning
Okay.
is like, somebody's like, hey, what do you guys think about doing this? And I'm like,
Oh.
you know.
You kind of automatically go to the no or the like, it doesn't, I don't know.
Yeah, and some
Yeah.
of that's like, I don't even know why. And some of it's because I already know how it's going to be.
Yes.
I know I wouldn't like that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I've had like a gazillion experiences in my life where I thought I wouldn't like something and then I loved it.
Right.
So you'd think that mental track would be like, oh, you know. Anyways, a couple of years ago, as I was going through all these big transitions, I read this book that was like, if you want the universe to create, like, come from the idea. There's an idea or a perspective that the universe, spirit, God wants me to have the life I yearn for.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I 100% agree.
And sometimes I'm living in that, and sometimes I'm not.
Sometimes it's really hard to
It seems like everything hates
place.
me.
Yeah.
But there is a place where I feel like that seems to be so.
Mm-hmm.
And this book was basically like, if you want the universe to, or God or spirit or life, you have to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to give you opportunities, or it's going to suggest things. So the book was just like, take what's offered
Yeah.
and do what's suggested.
Yep.
And it's great advice. It's an amazing just like mantra of like, I say yes. Because there's so many things that my default would be, no, that's, nah. And so I've just started practicing it of just like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds kind of scary. I don't know how that'll turn out.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. So as soon as you said it, I was like, yes.
Yeah. There's, I don't know if you read, Shonda Rhimes has a book called The Year of Yes. I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't read it.
Yeah, you can borrow it. I have it.
Okay.
But it's basically she, not quite from such a spiritual kind of place, but she just decided, like, for a year, I'm going to say yes to every opportunity, like whether I know it's the wrong thing or not. I'm just going to say yes and see what happens. And so you kind of follow her through this journey of saying yes to things that she maybe would normally say no to, and how she feels at the end of the year, like how many opportunities she had and came about because she was open to them. You know, the more you say yes, I think the more open you become. You condition yourself to come at things from a different place. Yeah.
What did you take from that?
From the book?
Yeah.
I think the idea of saying just being more open to things and not putting so much, I think I put a lot of meaning on things, and I like to explore, like, well, what does this mean? And sometimes put things into a bigger perspective when it could just be that thing. It's just that thing. And so I think I took from it more of just let things be. Like, be open, and whatever's happening, just let it happen. It doesn't have to mean anything. It might mean something, but it doesn't have to. Yeah.
And what does that like do for you?
I find I'm very, like, I expect a lot of myself. And so when things don't go the way I pictured them, or they're not like all lined up, or, you know, a conversation I have doesn't go wrong, I look at that as like, ooh, I am embarrassed, or I'm ashamed, and I put all of these like kind of negative things on me. And I think coming at things like it doesn't mean anything eases that for me.
just allows you to.
Yeah, just be. And this bad conversation, like, it doesn't define you. It just is what it is. It's just a bad conversation. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, I am super pumped for the podcast.
Yeah, me too.
I hope you guys are super pumped for the podcast. Matt, if people are wanting to connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, website is in process. It's close, but it's not officially launched yet. So maybe we'll just say in the notes for this episode, you can find a link to my website. And in the meantime, look me up on LinkedIn, Matt Maxwell. You could probably look up like Chicago coach. Kind of like a good-looking guy. Looks similar to this,
can see you.
but
Well,
probably
I guess
a little
the people
younger.
Listening just audio can't see you.
Look for the blue eyes.
Yeah. For those of you that are watching the video either through YouTube or cultivatingcouragepodcast.com, we will put a link to Matt. We might be able to actually link directly to your LinkedIn profile as well.
Yeah, sure.
In there.
And I'll eventually have other great things to link to.
Yeah.
So.
For those of you looking to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram. It's Robinson Kristin, and that's Kristin with a K and an I at the end. You can also find me on thrivecoachingstudio.com. And that's pretty much
Should we give them a preview of next episode?
Sure. Do you want to do it?
Yeah. So so these first few episodes, we're just kind of getting to know each other. Eventually we start having guests. And so our next episode, this one I let Kristin kind of interview me a bit, although it was just a nice conversation.
Yeah.
So it'll probably be something like that on the next episode. But we'll have it geared towards getting to know Kristin a little bit more about her background and what has her creating what she's creating right now.
Awesome. Okay, so everybody, thank you for tuning in. And wherever you are listening or watching, subscribe.
Yeah.
And tune in.
And say yes.
Yeah, say yes to subscribing.